Okay, everyone. So welcome to our food system seminar for this week. We're really excited to have Dan Kurzrock from Regrained. He's has played a really big role in the upcycled food movement in the US. And so we're really thrilled to have him here to talk more about his own experience as a founder and also to speak to us about his knowledge and expertise on upcycled food and what's new and good in the US and in other places as well. So Dan, we are going to pass it over to you. And again, we're so thrilled to have you and to have your time today.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Just confirming you can see the screen okay? Cool. And yeah, I love coming to speak with college-oriented groups because my entrepreneurial journey started while I was an undergraduate student. The business that we're running today is one that's really at the intersection of doing doing good for the planet and also doing good for the bottom line, right? So it's a triple bottom line business. We're trying to use our business as a force for good. We're actually a public benefit corporation as a legal structure. We're also a certified B Corp, 1% for the planet members. But most importantly, everything about our model, is focused on being at the intersection of sustainability, health, and and for-profit business. So to get into it a little bit, one way to think about what we're doing with Regrained and upcycled food, and I just want to note that it's kind of amazing speaking to a group, that it's a class where you guys have already been studying food waste this whole time, right? So a lot of times when I give talks like this, I spend a decent amount of energy up front just setting the context for the food waste problem overall. You guys are coming with a base of knowledge that's just incredible. Food waste wasn't even really talked about, in the lexicon before 2014, really, when the landmark report from the NRDC came out, and now there's more awareness than ever before about food waste, which gives people like me a lot of hope that maybe we'll solve it. So I like to think about what we're doing as a circular economy for food. You guys are also sustainability nerds. Maybe you've dug a bit into the circular economy as well. It's kind of moving from the model of take, make, waste, the linear economy, and creating one in which, endings can be beginnings. And there's a lot of aspects of it, and food upcycling is one important tool in that toolbox. Got our start as an undergraduate home brewer. I may or may not have learned how to brew beer underage. Was very intrigued by the fact that I could buy the ingredients to make beer and do the equipment. And it was a lot of fun. I don't have a lot of photos from those days for some reason, just this one of me and my co-founder, and I'm taking a crucial phone call. But that photo on the right is my actual home brewing equipment. It's a modified cooler. You take, there's 4 ingredients in beer. If I could actually see you, I'd do a quiz where you'd raise your hands and see who can name them. But the 4 ingredients in beer are water, grain, hops, and yeast. This is actually there's purity laws in places like Germany that require that beer be made only using those 4 ingredients, right? So there's of course a lot of different flavor profiles and whatnot for beer making, but they all come from those same ingredients. And at the very beginning part of the process, what you're doing is basically almost like making oatmeal. You heat up water and you mix it in with the grains. And as a brewer, the objective is to extract a liquid from that, right? Like beer is something that you drink. And so what you're doing is you're basically extracting the fermentable sugars from this material. And most of the brewing process is once you have that liquid, you boil it, you add hops, you cool that down, you add yeast, that ferments, that ends up as beer. But way back in the beginning, I was realizing that we were making food every time that we made beer. No one was talking about food waste. Upcycling wasn't really a word that anyone knew yet. It felt like, as we were experiencing this problem firsthand, that there had to be something better to do with the grain than put it in the compost. I was fortunate enough, which actually in my college environment didn't even have a compost bin. Grew up in an area where we did, so knew that was a thing. Went to school in Los Angeles. We didn't have a compost bin, so I was literally tipping coolers full of food into the dumpster every time I made a batch of beer. About 1 pound for every 6-pack. So making a 5-gallon batch of beer, which is like a third of a standard commercial keg, would require 30 pounds of food. So the original business idea wasn't really a business, it was a hobby. I wanted to keep making beer, didn't want to be wasting. It smelled like bread and oatmeal kind of mixed together. So I thought, hey, what if we made loaves of bread with this, sold it to friends, and then used the money from the bread in order to buy more ingredients to brew more beer for free. Didn't have the language to talk about the circular economy then, but that was, at a hobbyist level, that's really what we were doing. And that set me down this line of inquiry where, by just pursuing curiosity about what the actual industry was doing, discovered that the opportunity was actually quite a bit more substantial than what I was experiencing as a home brewer. Originally, I thought someday I'd want to have a brewery that was also a bakery, and it could be this concept that's kind of like a closed loop brewery, and still would maybe love to do that someday. But as we dug in, it became clear that there was just a whole lot more to tackle. I took this photo on the right outside of one craft brewery in one day. So this is a brewery that's about the size of Fremont Brewing in Seattle. Just to give you an idea of scale, there's thousands of breweries in the US. It's slowed down a little bit, but at one point there was actually more than 2 new breweries opening per day on average. Many of them opening up in urban centers. So there's this huge supply of this grain that's generated, and the historical way that it's been used is as a feed for cattle. There's first of all way too much relative to what the ranching industry can use, and also feed the animal protein isn't the most efficient way to use our resources, right? So the idea was evolved from how might we use our own grain to do something better with it, maybe fund the hobby, to is there maybe an opportunity here to connect the dots between the brewing industry and the food industry? Because I knew that and also validated through research, that the grain that we were using to make beer, once you extract the sugars, what's left is all the nutritious stuff. It's all the protein and fiber. So you've got this material that's generated in massive quantities every time beer is brewed, and it's got these properties that are potentially really valuable for food products. And that realization is really what we've been chasing and scaling up ever since. Today we are actually operating a full-scale ingredient business. We make our main ingredient is, you can think of it like a flour. It's a dry, stable powder that's made from this input from the breweries. We put it through a process, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and we produce this raw material that can be directly applied to different food products, bakery goods, snacks, even ice cream. There's a lot that can be done with it, and our business is focused first on this one ingredient and other value-added ingredients that we can make with it from there, such as Crispies, for example. So when you eat like a nutrition bar, there's these little textured pieces in there. We can use this to make things like that. And then our business at large is, let me see if that's coming on later, but it's okay. We're not just focused on this ingredient. We've structured our whole business to look at upcycled ingredients overall, and we're kind of acting as a platform, if you will, like an innovation platform for other food companies to understand what the upcycled food opportunity is, and providing them with ingredients. So what is upcycling? You guys have already talked about this in your class, which is great. We're going to go into a bit more depth today. The official definition of upcycling is one that was created by the Upcycled Food Association, of which I was one of the co-founding board members, and there's 7 or 8 of us that came together to create an industry nonprofit to create some standards around food upcycling, as well as a certification program, which I'll talk about in a second. One of the first things that we did as an organization was create a task force of stakeholders that are experts from just across sectors. There was academics involved, there was nonprofits involved, there was industry leaders involved, and the definition that was set is a bit of a mouthful, but it's on the slide. Upcycled food use ingredients that otherwise would have not gone to human consumption. So this part of it's really key. They're procured and produced using verifiable supply chains. So that's referring to the idea that you're not just marketing something as upcycled just because it's a convenient thing to do. And then crucially, have a positive impact on the environment. So we're, it's to really be an upcycler, you're focused on net benefit. So that's, for one thing you might consider is the, net benefit of a product that maybe takes more energy. Energy is not the only thing to look at, right? But just to kind of think about that. More energy to save the food than it would to let it go to waste, right? So it's looking at the whole picture, focusing on sustainability overall. Again, not just the common business sense of wasting less. And so it's really about putting products to higher use. I've always liked to talk about it as a strategy for doing more with less. I've got some friends that are running a company called Spare Food Co. We'll talk about them in a little bit. Their tagline is actually finding more ways it's like doing more with more, right? It's this idea of like, how can we really just improve the way that we value resources, right? And be smart about how we're feeding our growing population. The overall market is big. And there's growing consumer awareness. There's a lot of research that's gone into this. It's kind of maybe a little too granular for this class, but if you're interested in seeing some of that, Google upcycled food and consumer trends. I mean, this is the kind of thing where increasingly folks are looking for ways to vote with their purchases. Upcycling is a really clear way to do that. It's not the only solution to the climate crisis, and we hope that everyone is equally energized about everything else. But there's the upcycled food space is big and getting bigger. Just the Upcycled Food Association alone now has about 200 members. So that's it started with less than 10 of us, right? So it's been 2 years. So this is pretty rapidly reaching a tipping point right now. The certification that was launched last June, it was done to create a standard of identity for upcycled food. We don't, people, it's not a regulated claim like like organic and some of these others. It's one that needs to have integrity, needs to have third-party verification, to build trust and transparency, with the end customer. So for a product to be certified as upcycled, if you go to upcycledfood.org, you can read the full standard. It was actually pretty tricky to come up with because not all upcycled ingredients are the same, and not all end applications are the same. Consider like a beverage versus a baked good, and how much of an ingredient might be in a beverage where there's a lot of water in it versus in a baked good that is maybe a little more straightforward, or a soup, right? So the standard has a few different pathways to getting certified, and the focus is again on net benefit. It's a starting point. Like this certification is going to get better and hopefully more stringent, honestly, over time too. Upcycling is not a new idea. It's a new word for a really old idea. Pickles are my favorite example. This is value-added processing, right? It's like, how do we seal the seasons? Jams and preserves, right? You could argue are upcycled. And there are examples of pickles and jam that are kind of a modern twist on that upcycling tradition, where they're focused on smallholder farmers, for example, that don't have as much access to the value-added processing markets, because now you have cucumbers that are grown for pickling, right? So what about cucumbers that weren't grown for pickling that don't make it for market? The other side of things, which is where I tend to spend a lot of my time commercially, is on food manufacturing, food and beverage manufacturing, and then byproducts from the process. So this vat here is cheese being made. The byproduct for making cheese is whey, W-H-E-Y, whey protein. You see all over the grocery store now. It used to not be used for human consumption. It would be spread in the fields or enter waterways and create all kinds of problems. It's very high in protein. It's an animal protein, not a plant protein, but it's a source of protein. And a market was developed for whey protein that has actually gotten so robust over the last few decades that there's now whey producers where cheese is the byproduct. So that's kind of a funny, if you've got a dark sense of humor like I do, twist of fate, on upcycling. There is another side of the dairy industry, making yogurt, strained yogurts, and then there's a byproduct there that's called acid whey. And acid whey is actually very much not put to best use most of the time. And I'll give it some examples of brands that are doing some work with acid whey. But I like to use these 3 examples of pickles and jams and whey protein to show that, to acknowledge really that this is not a new idea. Yes, and calling it upcycling is a bit of a rebrand, but the idea here is that there are a lot of overlooked and undervalued sources of food that are being left off the table today of our food system. And by creating a standard of identity, for that, it's possible to use some of the market forces to actually make an impact on this problem. So our business at Regrained has evolved quite a bit from the days of home brewing and even our days of just kind of breaking out into the food scene with our own consumer products, which is the kind of the first thing that we did. And if you guys are curious about that, we can talk about it in the Q&A later. But what principally we're doing is selling upcycled food ingredients. So these are, wholesale relationships with other suppliers. What's different though is that we're not a commodity supplier here. This is a specialty ingredient that needs a lot of education. And we really are a development partner with the folks that we work with. And in some cases, we get hired to actually help them develop products. So our Upcycled Food Lab is focused on helping companies actually wrap their heads around the opportunity and even do some product development work with them. And then we have some technology that we developed as well with the USDA, and we have a patent on that. And longer term, we're looking at opportunities to license that and just generally expand our infrastructure geographically, because food waste needs to be solved on a local level all over. And so we can take what we've developed and increase our scale and our impact by bringing it elsewhere. Our technology is focused on stabilizing the grain that comes out of the breweries. It's really high moisture content. Remember, it's described it kind of as oatmeal in texture. It spoils in less than half a day, actually. So one of the reasons why this hasn't been done before is because it's very difficult to process effectively. And so we had a breakthrough through a partnership with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and that resulted in a patent that kind of powers everything that we're doing. And our first ingredient, Super Grain Plus, it's used for a lot of different things, from savory to sweet. It's mostly, right, our experience so far has been going into direct food applications, but we're also, kind of the next frontier for us, goes far beyond that. So definitely, if you're interested in kind of tracking where we're going next, let's stay connected after today. For food product developers, it checks a lot of boxes for them. It's flavorful, it's nutritious, it's plant-based, it's sustainable. It unlocks claims, whether they want to increase the fiber count and decrease net carbs, or make a sustainability claim like water savings per package. And this is a really good opportunity as just a platform for new product innovation. We don't need to go into depth in this, but there's a lot of categories that we're playing in just with this one ingredient. One example of a commercial product that launched is we like to work with startups too, in addition to some of the world's biggest food companies. What's great about these startups is that they can move fast. So this is a product that we launched with a company called Dope. It was developed and launched in less than 6 months. It's an edible bakeable cookie dough. They're a Shark Tank company. Maybe some of you are familiar with them on that. They were just e-commerce until this year, and now they're breaking into retail. And we had an item that started with them just as a test. We were planning to just have it live for a quarter, launched April of last year. And it's been so popular that it became a part of their full-time lineup. So we're super excited about this. It's called Brownie Beast. On their website right now, it's still called Beast Mode Brownie. That was the original name for it. Probably some trademark issues with that, I would guess, which is why it evolved into Brownie Beast. Really great product, and it's a cookie dough that you can just, this one's not even, it's healthier than a normal cookie dough, but it's an indulgence really. But it's one that their customers can feel good about. Another product we launched in partnership with a startup to just, again, proof of concept, is a semolina artisanal pasta, a really high-end pasta company, or we're working with some lower cost pasta options as well. But this is a really great premium dried pasta that's manufactured in Southern California. Their upcycled strozzapreti, is also a great application of the Regrained product, and that's available on their website too. And they've got growing distribution, but they're also a pretty small but growing company. And for us, again, we like working with these companies, they're not necessarily immediate opportunities to sell huge amounts of volume of our product, but every product that we get inside creates a platform for education, right? And for getting the word out about upcycling and about the regrained ingredients. And, that will eventually create a bit of a flywheel effect, hopefully. One of the things that we offer, through working with us is this opportunity to communicate sustainability to the end customer. Developing new products and the supply chain impacts of that are a really authentic way for companies to put their money where their mouth is, and talk about it, publicly. Again, hopefully it's not the only thing they're doing for the environment, but this is a tool that is not just great for, actually just making great products, but it's marketable as well. One of the ways that we like to help frame things is the water footprint. So with upcycled products, or at least ours, there's no water footprint, right? All the water was used to produce the product for its first use. And so we're giving it a second use. So it's got a water footprint of 0. So any product that it's using, displacing any virgin resources, is thus saving water. And then going to go into some examples of other upcycled supply chains that I get excited about. And these aren't all of them, but I think it's a good place to start. And then we can kind of open it up to see what folks want to talk about. The coffee. Everyone drinks coffee every morning, pretty much, right? Or maybe not everybody, but we all know what coffee is. When coffee is consumed, it's really the bean. So that bean is really a pit inside of a fruit. And that fruit is typically discarded. And it's got a lot of names: coffee fruit, coffee cherry, cascara. And there's a number of companies that have launched to turn it into products, mostly beverages is what we're seeing. There's one in the Seattle area called the Coffee Cherry Company. They used to be called Coffee Flour. That's what this packaging is from, so it's a little outdated. Definitely check them out. Then there are finished good companies like Riff, for example. Riff is live on WeFunder right now, so you can actually invest in them, which is kind of cool. And they are an energy drink that's powered, because this coffee cherry has antioxidants and things like that, but also has caffeine. Another ingredient that I should put a slide in here for is the coffee leaf. So the coffee, that's another co-product from the coffee plant that is being upcycled. There's a company called Wise up in Vancouver that makes a tea out of it, and then we're actually working with them around actually selling that ingredient to other food companies. Cacao is one of my favorite other examples. So the cacao fruit is where we get chocolate. Similarly to coffee, the bean is what gets turned into chocolate. The fruit typically is discarded, and it is really delicious. It's got a really nice tropical flavor profile with pretty high acidity, nice and tart and sweet as well. And companies like Cacao, this is actually a product that's launched under Mondelez. Mondelez is one of the world's biggest food. That's who makes Oreos, right? For those of you who aren't familiar with Mondelez, go look at their website. You'll know all of their brands. They launched a startup basically within the company to focus on upcycling the cacao fruit specifically. Shoka, I think they're also live on WeFunder right now, so you can invest in them too. Equity crowdfunding is super cool. It's not what this talk is about, but something I'm super passionate about. This is a beverage, that's made with the fruit, and this is another one that we're super interested in, because I see a lot of potential for applications across the food and beverage industry. Acid whey, we talked about earlier. There's a number of companies now that are producing products from acid whey. Spartonic and Superfrau are two of the, I think, more prominent ones. White Mustache has been around for a while, though. They've done some really cool things out of Brooklyn. What I like about White Mustache actually is that they're a yogurt company and they use their own acid whey. But there's in most of these companies, the supply chain involves partnering with another manufacturer and rescuing food from them. And I think this is my last example on this, although there's a lot more that we could get into. Bread. So bread is actually it's so hard to inventory plan with bread when you're a manufacturer. There's bread waste on every level of the supply chain, especially at grocery stores. Grocery stores and commercial bakeries. By volume, I believe it's the largest component of food waste leaving in food banks. They have way too much bread. They can't take more bread. So there's been some really creative upcycling uses for bread, because you can only make so many breadcrumbs and croutons, right? There's a company called Toast that is now licensing their model around the world. Started out of London. They're turning bread back into beer. It's actually, again, rooted in an ancestral tradition of from Eastern Europe called kvass, which is just a actually beer that used to be made with stale bread. So beer is often thought of as liquid bread, right? So here's like turning bread back into beer. Misadventures is a vodka company. They're actually doing a bit more than vodka, so keep an eye on them too. But that their first product line is a vodka that is made from commercial bread waste. So kind of the circle of the loaf, if you will, right? So like, from beer into bread and back again. And that is the end of my formal, part of the presentation here. For some more information, our B2B website is upcycledfoods.com. You can go to regrained.com if you want to see more about we showcase different products that we're launching there. The industry nonprofit is a .org, of course. And that's website. So, and then for food waste information overall, you guys have probably been turned on to Refed, but that's one of the best places that you can look. So it's funny giving these on Zoom because I don't know if I just put everyone to sleep or not, but we'll stop the screen share there and would love to get into chatting with folks.
Dan, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And I loved all of the examples that you gave. I shared with the class at the beginning of our seminar that I do a lot of research in coffee, tea, and cacao as well. So it was cool to see examples from those industries. So folks, this is your opportunity. We have a good amount of time to field questions. And I think we had some coming in that we can capture, and then we can open it up to new questions that come about.
Yeah, and I can start, and I'm happy to start with the ones that are in the chat so far. If you guys give everyone else some time to write in or unmute and go for it. Okay, yeah. So this one already got answered about it doesn't make them drunk. Yeah. So the alcohol comes later in the beer brewing process from fermentation. So everything we're doing is before that. There's also no hops, at the part of the process that we're rescuing this stuff from. Because the brewing process takes the sugars, do products made have a lower sugar content? They can. It all depends on the finished formula. Like if someone's making a brownie, it's probably going to have a lot of sugar and butter that's added to it, right? But about 90% of the sugars from the grain are taken from the brewing process. And the other thing that's kind of interesting about this is so barley is grown, barley is malted, and then in the brewing process, the starches from the malt are converted into sugars. So there actually is like a sugar, like pure, like registered as sugar, not as just a carbohydrate, on a label that is in this material that wouldn't have existed without the brewing process. But then you can reduce added sugar, later because of that natural sweetness. And because of the high fiber count, it's about 40% fiber. Products are made with other like resistant starches and kind of no sugar added type ingredients, like the ones like Icon Foods, for example, up in the Northwest is making a lot of like chocolate chips and things like that without sugar in them. You can create like keto friendly products too. Are there upcycled products that are cheaper for the consumer? This is a really good question. So are there upcycled? So it's basically asking about, the pricing positioning of this. And intuitively, you would think these food products would be cheaper, right? Because they're coming from waste streams. And at scale, they probably should be, right? But most of the companies that are tackling this are pretty early stage. There's a lot of, and most of them are starting at a price premium, at this time. I think virtually every founder that you talk to that's like passionate about this mission wants to simultaneously tackle hunger and food waste, but those two issues are pretty, they get conflated a lot, but they're separate. And so it's something that it's kind of a case by case, but I would say generally right now, upcycled ingredients and upcycled foods are going to be priced similar to like organic foods relative to conventional foods. What other ingredients is Upcycled Food Lab? So I assume you're referring to the Regrained Upcycled Food Lab. So the three ingredients that we're focused on right now are the brewer's grain products, the coffee leaf product and the cacao fruit product. And we're building out a whole portfolio beyond that. And is it hard? You guys are good. You keep putting the questions in here. I would love to hear someone's voice at some point. So let's get a brave soul to unmute. Is it hard to make it taste similar to flour to get people to switch? So it's not, what's interesting is that it's not like this product that I assume you're talking about the Regrained Super Grain Plus product. Like it's not a flour. It doesn't perform like flour has a very specific function for baking. You know, it creates like gluten is actually a really good thing in baking. Gluten's very misunderstood these days. And the flour is like what contributes, you know, the whole structure, you know, to bread. And our stuff is it's an inclusion, so it's used typically at like anywhere from 10 to 30% of a product's recipe, contributing flavor, contributing nutritional and benefits, and contributing a marketing message, you know, powered by authentic sustainability. So it's not gonna, we're not trying to create products that taste the same as conventional products. This is like most companies that we're working with them on creating a new type of product, which you know, if you take like an intellectual, you know, rebuke to that, maybe like an argument that's just, I think, good to consider about upcycling overall is, okay, so if we're doing that, then that means that you're creating, it's not like we're substituting in for these virgin resources necessarily, you know, initially, right? So it's creating new products. You know, and there's, because those new products are, you know, they're having an impact upstream on rescuing the food, but it's also just introducing new products. And it's not like it's necessarily replacing products, you know, straight out the gates. And so you got to kind of, what we try to do is take a long view, you know, of this and start with the common sense, what we believe to be the common sense, you know, place of, hey, we should not be wasting food, period. And this is a way to make sure that food reaches its highest and best, you know, best use. And let's start from there. And no worries, Sebastian, about the phrasing. Did I not? If I didn't answer your question, feel free to clarify. But maybe we can move on to any others that are out there today. Any brave souls that want to unmute?
I see a hand from Sarah Dandy, if you'd like to share.
I will unmute and I'll even turn my camera.
Wow. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. So my question is, so do you mainly sell to food manufacturers, or are your products available like in the grocery store for consumers to buy and bake with and things like that?
Yeah, so we used to do both. So what we started doing, like our strategy was, hey, let's make some finished goods that we can sell into grocery stores and things like that, and use that as a way to help get the attention of other businesses. So we did a nutrition bar in the past. We had a snack puff as well that was actually in Fred Meyer. And we kind of had this split focus of like, let's use our own brand as a way to build the market and also you know, generate some profit that we can use to fund the ingredient business. Ended up being too much at once for us to do both. Like we're more commercially focused, like our long-term focus is on ingredients, and so we did stop producing these kind of the finished goods. And so like some of our customers' products can be found in stores, but we're not selling like bags of flour directly to grocery stores. We do have a line of at-home baking mixes that we're going to be launching, you know, later this year. We're just going to sell those online though. We're doing kind of limited quantities. And the goal of each of these launches of finished goods for us is to show that different things can be done, raise consumer awareness, and also raise industry awareness and go from there. Yeah. Hi, Lane.
Lane and Carson, I see you too.
Oh, hey, sorry, this is Carson. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, your company seems really cool. I already looked at your website and saw what positions were available. It looks like a lot of things require experience, but I'm wondering if someone is really passionate, engaged about like what you're doing, how can we get involved? Because I'm really like, I don't know, all of your stuff really resonated with me, and I wanted to just like ask that directly.
Oh, I love it. And yeah, so thanks, Carson. So yeah, we do have internships available like pretty much always. As a rule, just to make this applicable to like, anyone and anything they might want to do, you should always just write into a company and see what's available, even if it doesn't list things exactly. A lot of times there's this like and we're guilty of this too. There's this like historical precedent of how you list jobs and what kind of experience you're looking for. And that can exclude some people that maybe don't have that direct experience, but could. And especially if you're in a college environment, like now's the time to get experience with startups, get experience with big companies, kind of figure out, where you want to go. So like, yeah, definitely hit us up. We're a really small team, and can always benefit from smart, passionate people. And most, there's many other companies that are out there that are like that, especially if you find a startup and if you write it on their website. Actually, a little known fact is a lot of times it'll just go directly to the founder CEO, because when you're a small company, you can't necessarily have the lower level staff to deal with that. Also connect with people on LinkedIn. And yeah, take action on what you're passionate about. So yeah, looking forward to hearing from you, Carson.
Awesome. We'll see you in the office in about a month.
Sounds good.
That was great. We have a bit more time for questions, so feel free to pop them in the chat or raise your hand if you want to unmute. Dan, I do have a question for all the business students who are in the seminar. I'm curious, you talked about reaching scale, or what that looks like for you, and you specifically mentioned a future goal of licensing being a part of your business model. Can you talk a bit more about your vision for that, or what you see as being kind of, far into the future when licensing is a reality? What does that look like in cities around the country and possibly around the world?
Yeah, for sure. Really good question. There's still candidly a lot for us to figure out with that. What we're focused on now is the demand side of the equation. For a long time, we were, the limiting factor was on the supply side. And what I mean by that is like actually the ability to produce scalable quantities, of this material. And this process that we developed with the USDA, we can, just with one machine and one plant, we can produce 10 to 20 million pounds of the product per year, just in one plant, which is, by the way, not even, it's like one brewery's output, one or two breweries output. So a very small percentage of the overall available grain supply. And so our strategic thinking on this is we're going to seed the market with, this first pilot plant. And, we're really looking forward to the opportunity to build machine number 2, because then we get to fix all the things that we fucked up on machine number 1, pardon my language. And so it's, going to be kind of like this step function is how we see it. So, we're kind of going to operate at a certain capacity, and then we're going to have to make the capital investment and expanding that capacity. Now, there might be creative ways for us to do this that we're actively exploring. We actually are actively, exploring with some partners around the world, where, there could be some co-financing to do this. So like, if you can imagine, in another part of the world, doesn't really make a lot of sense to ship this upcycled material, right? If we're trying to focus on net impact, like let's reduce the actual food miles that are being traveled. But it's a bitter chicken or the egg with supply and demand. And so, for us right now, and probably for the next few years, it's going to be heavily focused on the demand side of the equation. And then as more of these products start to launch, and by the way, the real challenge here is that these food companies, the big ones especially, are 2-3 years to take a product from idea to shelf. And so it takes time, but then once they're in, it's like the volume can spin up pretty quickly and consistently from there. So we're looking forward to being able to, kind of shift mindsets at some point to then, expanding the capacity to produce as well. That was a little over the place in an answer, but hopefully.
No, that's great. I realized I was asking you to kind of, think many years beyond where you're currently at, but interesting to hear, where you're at right now and sort of what the incremental steps might look like.
Oh, I love living in the future in my head, right? That's your job as the founder. So it's,
yeah, that's right. You have to be a visionary, that's for sure. Any other questions from folks today in the seminar? This is your last opportunity, at least live. And then Dan, Bridget has been absolutely fantastic in all the ways, but they've been compiling from the reflections that students do, questions, and also kind of insights that students have gained from presentations. And so you'll get to see some of those reflections in a couple weeks as a follow-up, which is really nice.
Great. I look forward to that. Look forward to any ideas for companies that you think we should collaborate with. You can hit up some of your favorite brands on Instagram and be like, hey, you guys should make an upcycled product with Regrained. That'd be cool. So
Excellent. So y'all, in your reflections, Dan is crowdsourcing any ideas that you have, any creative insights, any concepts that Regrained can repurpose. In the meantime, I think we're all set for questions. Dan, it's really been fantastic. I think your presentation really fits so well in the sequence of presentations that we've had, going from, you know, the farm level up through now we're at the retail level. And we're so thankful for your time, and also just to hear about really this exciting movement that you've been a part of, and that's really just kind of bubbled up in the last couple of years under this kind of rebranded concept that you discussed, the upcycling of food. So thank you so much. I'm sure everyone will be really excited to follow your progress, and you may hear from some folks as well.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Thank you.